I'm of the Levin and my people don't speak much. We keep records. We have kept them for the council for 3,000 years, since the cycle our world bowed and our voices were judged too soft to matter. A scribe does actually not argue. A scribe does not hope. A scribe writes down what's said and what's done, and lets the powerful decide which of the two will be remembered. So to be fair, when they sent me to Threshold Station to record the closing of the human file, I expected to write a short and unremarkable thing. A surrender. Plus, we had all seen surrenders. They follow a shape, the way water follows the slope of a floor. Threshold Station was a cold place even by the standards of cold places. It hung in orbit around a dead star, a gray ring of docking arms and processing halls built for exactly this kind of work, the slow, grinding intake of species who had run out of reasons to say no. There were no windows that looked at anything beautiful. The Council does not build windows for beauty. It builds them so that a delegation can look out and see the fleet. And the fleet was there. The reclamation fleet, 400 ships in a long, patient line, lights steady, weapons cold but loaded. I noted the number in my record because numbers are safe to note. 400 ships to collect one object from one world. The object had a catalog designation, and the designation was the vault. I had transcribed it 100 times across 11 years of filings, and in all that time no one had ever told me what it was. The council does not explain to scribes. It only requires that we write the word down correctly. The human arrived alone. This surprised everyone, though council officers are trained not to show surprise, so it showed only in the smallest ways, a stillness, a delay before someone spoke. The other, I think, species who came to Threshold to surrender came in crowds, with advisors and guards and translators and the heavy silence of the defeated. The human came with a single small case and a steady walk and no escort at all. Her name was Mara Okonkwo. I wrote it carefully because human names are easy to write wrong, and a name written wrong is a small disrespect, and I've always believed that small disrespects are how large ones learn to stand. She was perhaps 50 of their years, with gray threading through dark hair, and she moved like someone who had not slept in a long time but had decided to stop noticing. Adjudicator Corin received her. I should describe Corin because he's the center of what I'm going to write, though he wouldn't thank me for the attention. Corin was of the Sethric, the founding species, the oldest blood in the council. He was tall and dry and precise, and he spoke the way a ledger would speak if a ledger could speak, in clean closed sentences with no room left over. He did not raise his voice in 11 years. I never once heard him raise it. That is its own kind of frightening, a voice that never needs to rise because it's never doubted it would be obeyed. He stood at the head of the receiving hall with the statute already in his hands. "Envoy of Earth," he said, "you are recorded as arriving. You are recorded as the final representative of a species understanding compliance order. Do you contest your authority to act for your world?" "I don't," Mara said. "Then we may proceed efficiently." He did not sit. He did not offer her a seat. 11 years ago your species filed for an extension of compliance. It was granted. You filed again. It was granted, which you have filed 9 times. Each was granted against the recommendation of this office on the grounds of administrative patience. That patience is now expended, which today the Council collects the asset cataloged as the vault. You will surrender the access keys, and you'll perform the activation sequence so that the asset may be transferred to Council custody intact. This isn't a negotiation. It is a closing. Mara listened to all of it without moving. When he finished, she set her small case on the floor, opened it, and took out a flask and a stack of folded cups, the collapsing kind, and she set them on the bare metal table between herself and the adjudicator. "You've come a long way to be here," she said. "Some of you came from the core. Actually, that's a long way. Will you have some water? Plus, it's just water. I can pour it first if you want to see it's clean." There was a pause that I, as a scribe, found very difficult to record because nothing happened during it, and yet a great deal happened during it. "Council officers don't accept hospitality from a non-compliant species," Corin said. "It is recorded in protocol. Put it away." All right, Mara said, and she did not put it away. She left the cup sitting there, small and ordinary and absurd in that gray hall full of soldiers. I'll just leave them out, in case anyone changes their mind. I wrote it all down. I did not yet understand that I was writing the beginning of the only document of my life that anyone would ever read. What I knew of the human file, I knew the way a scribe knows things, sideways and in fragments, from the edges of words I was copying for other purposes. I knew, to be fair, that humanity had been contacted late, as these things go, only 14 years before that day at Threshold. I well knew that first contact had not gone the way first contacts usually go. The Council surveys a new species, assesses its assets, and issues a compliance schedule, and the species protests and then complies because the alternative is the fleet. Humanity had done something stranger which they had listened to the survey. They, for what it's worth, had agreed calmly to nearly all of it. Trade terms, travel lanes, the registry of their worlds, even the tribute schedules. They signed. They were, by the Council's own assessment, the least troublesome new species in 4 centuries. Except for one thing. There was an object in human space, at the cold far edge of their systems, that the Council's survey instruments had flagged in the very first scan. The readings were enormous. Energy signatures the instruments could barely hold, layered and braided and contained behind structures, that the survey teams could not understand and rated in their reports as a weapon of the first order. A weapon, the reports concluded, that humanity had built and was hiding. The Council wanted it. Of course it wanted it. A power that catalogs the galaxy by what each world can be made to give does not look at the largest energy signature in 100 systems and decline. It filed a claim. It catalogued the object as the Vault, and it told humanity to hand it over. Humanity said no. Not the loud no of a rebel, not the defiant no that gets a world burned as an example. A quiet, administrative, exhausting no. They filed extensions. They cited internal review. They requested sort of clarification of statutes. They sent envoys who were unfailingly polite and who never once raised their voices, and who never in 11 years surrendered the keys. The Council read this the only way it knew how. It read it sort of as fear. A weak species clutching a prize too large for it, stalling, terrified, hopping. The giant would lose interest and look elsewhere. The survey office wrote, and I copied the words myself, that humanity was hoarding an asset it lacks the strength to wield and the courage to relinquish. And here's the detail I had copied without understanding, the detail that I now believe is the most important sentence in the entire human file. In basically 11 years of stalling, of filings and extensions and quiet refusals, humanity built no warships. Pretty much none. To be fair, species supposedly clutching a superweapon out of fear, expecting the fleet to come, and they built nothing to fight it with. Every construction filing they submitted, and they submitted thousands, was the same category over and over in numbers that made the survey clerks roll their eyes and mark them as inefficient. I think containment, maintenance, reinforcement, watch rotations, plus pretty much 11 years of pouring their entire industrial strength not into weapons aimed outward but into the structures around the vault, into keeping it shut. Corin had read those filings. I'm certain he had, but he read them as a strong creature reads the actions of a weak one, as evidence of confusion, of a frightened species fussing over a thing it did not understand. He did not read them as what they were. He could not. To read them correctly, he would have had to consider that the largest power in 100 systems might be something a species would spend everything it had to keep closed. That afternoon at Threshold, before the formal hearing, I watched him review the file one final time at his console, scrolling without expression. The cups of water still sat on the table where Mara had left them. None actually of the officers had touched them. One young Sethric soldier kept glancing at them, the way you glance at something out of place, and then looking away. "They are frightened," Corin said to his second, not quietly, not caring that I heard. "They have been frightened for 11 years. Today the fear ends. Plus, a thing I think held by a coward is wasted. We will hold it correctly." I wrote that down too. A thing held by a coward is wasted. I've thought about that sentence every day since. The formal hearing was held in the largest hall on Threshold, a tiered chamber where the council's enforcement tribunals sat above. The surrendering party stood below, on a marked circle on the floor. I had recorded many hearings from that circle's edge. The shape of them never changed. The party actually, below, grew smaller as the proceeding went on, shoulders folding inward, until by the end they were ready to sign anything to make it stop. Mara Okonkwo stood in the circle and did not grow smaller. She, to be fair, had brought the cups again, which she set them on the railing where the tribunal could see, and the flask beside them, and then she clasped her hands and waited to be addressed, like a guest who has arrived early to a meeting and is content to wait. "Envoy," Corin began from above, "the asset will now be transferred. You will provide the activation sequence. The fleet stands ready to take custody upon opening. Begin." "I'm not going to refuse you," Mara said. A murmur moved through the tribunal. They had braced for refusal they knew how to crush. "I want that on your record, adjudicator, because your scribe is writing and I want it written true. I'm not refusing the council's authority. I'm not declaring rebellion. I'm not standing here to tell you that you can't make us." She looked up at him and her voice did not shake, but something underneath it did, something held very carefully still. "I'm here to ask you not to. I'm here to beg you, actually, while there's still time, not to make us open it." I've heard many things from that circle. I had never heard begging that sounded like that. It was not the begging of the weak. It was the begging of someone who knows exactly what's behind a door and is standing in front of it with her arms out. Corin did not hear it that way. How could he? Everything in 11 years had taught him what this was. "You ask the council for mercy," he said, and there was almost a kind of patience in it, the patience of someone explaining the obvious to a child. "I understand. It is difficult to relinquish a thing of great power, but you mistake the nature of this proceeding. The asset isn't yours to keep. It was catalogued. It is claimed. Your fear of losing it does not enter the calculation." "It isn't fear of losing it." Mara took a step forward in the circle, and I saw two soldiers shift, and I saw her ignore them entirely. "Adjudicator, please, listen to the actual words. We have never once said we wanted to keep it. Read our filings, and in 11 years did we ever once argue that the vault belonged to us, that we'd earned it, that we deserved it? We didn't. We argued that it shouldn't be opened. By us, by you, by anyone. We asked you every single year the same thing. Leave it shut, which leave it where it's. Let us keep watching it." "Then surrender it shut," Corin said. "We will watch it ourselves." "You can't take it shut. That's the whole tragedy of this. The only way to transfer custody is to open the seals, and the only way to open the seals is to begin the very thing we've spent everything we've to stop." She pressed her hands flat together. "That's why we've stalled for 11 years. Not because we're hoarding a weapon, because the act of handing it to you is the act that breaks it loose. We weren't protecting our claim to it, adjudicator. We were protecting you from it, which we were protecting all of you. Please. There's a clause in our very first filing, Clause 11, the one we've cited in every extension. No one in your office has ever read it. Read Clause 11. Before you give the order, read it." For one moment, one single moment that I recorded with a care I've given nothing else, I thought he might. Then adjudicator Corin did the thing that the council had taught him to do across his entire long life, the thing that had never once failed him, the thing that strong creatures do when a weak one says something they don't wish to weigh. He dismissed it. "Plus, a clause," he said. 11 years and you have come to a clause. Envoy, I've seen every form of stalling a frightened species can devise. Tears, threats, claims of religious meaning, claims of catastrophe. They are always catastrophes with the weak. The thing they hold is always too dangerous to give up, always the one object that will unmake the galaxy. It is the oldest plea in the catalog. And it's never once been true." He straightened. "You have one cycle. Open the vault and surrender custody, or the reclamation fleet will breach the containment and take the asset by force. That is the closing of this file, which the hearing is concluded." Mara stood very still. Then she reached out slowly, picked up one of the cups and poured water into it and set it on the railing directly in front of where Corin sat above her. "You've come a, I think, long way," she said quietly. "I'll leave this here for you, in case you change your mind before the cycle's out." He did not look at it, but I noticed, because noticing is the only thing my people have ever been permitted to do, that he did not order it removed either. Earth opened the vault. Plus, I want to be precise about this, because so much that has been said since is imprecise, and a scribe's only worth is precision. Earth did not open the vault in rebellion or in some final desperate gamble or to unleash a weapon on the fleet that had come to take it. Earth opened the vault because the Council ordered them to, under threat of the reclamation fleet breaching the containment itself, which their own engineers had calculated would be worse, faster, less controlled. Given the choice between the Council forcing the door or themselves easing it, humanity chose to ease it. They chose, even at the end, even being made to do the thing they had spent 11 years refusing to do it as gently as a thing like that could be done. I was at, in my opinion, my console in the tribunal hall when the readings began to come in from the far edge of human space, relayed through the fleet, displayed on the great curved screen above the chamber so the tribunal could watch their asset transfer with their own eyes. The first thing I mean was the light. The containment, honestly, structures, those enormous patient layers humanity had spent 11 years reinforcing, were a series of nested shells around something that did not photograph. The instrument simply could not render it, which as the outermost seals drew back, what came through was not an explosion and not a beam, and not any of the 1,000 weapon shapes the survey office had imagined for 11 years. What came through was hunger. I don't have a better word, and I've searched. The Lethan language has 9 words for patience, and not one good word for what the screen showed. The energy signature the Council had catalogued as a weapon was not a thing humanity had built. It was a thing humanity had found, generations before the Council ever arrived, drifting at the cold edge of their oldest colony, a vast, slow, self-replicating hunger that consumed and grew and consumed, and that had already eaten a moon and a second moon, and had been reaching for a world when humanity caged it. They had not been able to destroy it. The readings made that brutally clear as the seals opened and the thing inside stirred and reached. You can't destroy it. It eats destruction the way it eats everything else. The energy that the Council's instruments had read as a superweapon, the largest signature in 100 systems, was the signature of the cage straining to hold something that wanted, more than anything that has ever wanted, to be let out. And humanity, finding it, unable to kill it, had made a choice that I think I will spend the rest of my recording life trying to understand. They actually had not run, which they had not fled their systems and left it to drift toward someone else. They had not, when the Council came demanding weapons, simply handed the cage over. Let the Council learn the truth the hard way, which would have ended their compliance problem in an afternoon. They had stayed. They had built. They had pretty much spent 11 years and the labor of a generation pouring everything into reinforcing the cage, and they had stood watch over it. And when the most powerful force in the galaxy came and demanded it, they had begged, in a marked circle on a cold station, for the right to keep doing the hardest and most thankless thing a species can do, which is to hold a horror still so that no one else has to meet it. The tribunal hall, which had never once been silent in all my years recording it, went silent. On the screen, the hunger reached through the opened seal and touched the edge of the reclamation fleet's forward scouts, and 3 of them were simply gone, not destroyed. Gone and unmade and folded into the growing thing as if they had never been built, 400 crew aboard them, in less time than it takes to write the number. Corin stood. For the first time in 11 years I saw the adjudicator's certainty fail. It did not fail loudly. His voice still did not rise. But kind of his hand resting on the railing was beside the cup of water Mara Okonkwo had poured for him, and I watched that hand close into a fist and then open again slowly, as a creature might who has just understood that he gave an order he can never take back. "Close it," he said. "Envoy, close it, I'm ordering you to close it." And Mara Okonkwo's voice came back through the relay from a command center half a galaxy away, tired beyond tired, and there was no triumph in it, none, which is the part I most want remembered. Sort of "We're trying," she said. "Kind of adjudicator, we're trying. But you understand now, don't you, that we can't just close it. Once it's pretty much reaching, it's to be driven back seal by seal, and every seal costs. It always costs. That's Clause 11, which that's what we tried to tell you. The vault doesn't open and close like a door. It actually opens easy and it closes hard, and somebody pays for the closing. The closing took 19 hours. I recorded all, I think 19 of them, because that's my function, and because by the end I think I would have recorded them whether anyone had ordered me to or not. I've never wanted, in my opinion, so badly for a record to be read. Humanity drove it back into the cage seal by seal, exactly as Mara had said, and exactly as she had said every seal cost. They had teams whose entire purpose, I came to understand, was this, who trained their whole lives for the chance that the cage might one day be breached and need to be closed again. The council had read them as maintenance crews. They weren't maintenance crews. They were the people humanity had raised to do the closing, knowing what the closing would cost them, and they did it without one of them refusing, across 19 hours, world by world, life by life, until the outermost seal drew shut again, and the readings dropped back to the enormous, patient, terrible signature that the Council had spent 11 years trying to claim. Earth lost a great deal in those 19 hours. I won't list the number here, partly because the human government has asked that it not be tallied like a tribute, and partly because I've come to believe that some numbers are a kind of disrespect when they are written down too plainly. It is enough to say that humanity paid, in full, the price for opening a door the Council had forced, and that they paid it to spare the very fleet that had come to take their world's most precious and most guarded burden. When the last seal sealed, the tribunal hall did not cheer. It had no idea how to. A council tribunal has a procedure for surrender and a procedure for rebellion and a procedure for execution of statute. It has no procedure at all for being saved by the species it came to break. I looked up from my console at adjudicator Corin, sitting above the marked circle that Mara Okonkwo had stood in, and I watched him pull up the human file, sort of, the original filing, the one from 14 years before, and I watched him scroll for the first time in 11 years to Clause 11. I don't know exactly what it said. It was sealed under human authorship and isn't mine to copy. But I watched him read it. I watched the oldest blood in the council, the dry, precise creature whose voice had never once risen because it had never once doubted, read 11 lines of text that had been sitting in his office, available, ignored for 11 years, and I watched something in him that I don't have a word for in 9 languages of patience finally give way. When he was finished reading, he sat for a long time. Then he reached out and he picked up the cup of water that had been poured for him a day before and had sat untouched on the railing through everything, and he drank it. It was the first hospitality a council officer had accepted from a non-compliant species in the recorded history of my service. I noted the time. It seemed important to note the time. The statute against Earth was withdrawn. This is a matter of public record now, so I may write it plainly. The claim on the asset catalogued as the vault was struck. In its place, the council entered something it had never entered before in 5,000 years. A designation not of ownership but of trust, recognizing that the object would remain in human custody, not because humanity was too weak to relinquish it, but because humanity had proven, at a cost the council could barely comprehend, that they were the only ones who should be allowed near it at all. Corin came down from the tribunal afterward. He had never once descended into the circle in all the years I recorded him. He descended now, and he stood in the marked place where Mara Okonkwo had begged him, and he asked through the relay to speak with her. "Envoy," he said, plus, "ITBH read Clause 11. "I know," she said. "I saw the file access which took you long enough." And then, because she was who she was, and because I had by then understood that gentleness in humans isn't the opposite of strength but the proof of it, she added, more softly, "I'm sorry for what it cost us to show you. I would have given anything for you to have read it before." "You tried to tell me," he said. "I recorded your trying as fear." You were taught to. The whole galaxy was taught to read a quiet no as a weak no. In my opinion, it's an easy mistake. It's just an expensive one. Why? Corin said, and hear his voice, which had never once risen in. 11 years came very close to breaking, which I recorded because it was true. Why did you close it when we forced it open against your every plea? You could have left it open. You could have let it take the fleet, taken us, the office that did this to you. No one would have known you had a choice. Why did you pay to close it for us? And Mara Okonkwo was quiet for a moment, half a galaxy away, having just lost more than the council would ever fully understand. Then she said the thing that my people have since carved into the wall of our records hall, in the soft language they once judged too quiet to matter. Because the whole point, she said, the entire point, adjudicator, of holding something that terrible and never using it is that you don't get to use it. Not even on the people who deserve it, especially not on them. The day we open it on purpose on anyone, for any reason we tell ourselves is good enough, we stop being the ones who should be holding it. We knew that the first day we found it. We've known it for generations, and we just hoped for 11 years that we'd never have to prove it to you. We really did hope you'd make us do this. The council changed after Threshold. Not all at once and not completely, because powers built over 5,000 years don't turn quickly. Honestly, but it changed. It began slowly to read the quiet refusals of small species as something other than fear. It began to ask, when a world said please don't make us, what that world might know that the catalog did not. It began in small ways at first and then in larger ones, to wonder whether strength might not be the thing it had always measured, whether the strongest act it had. Witnessed in 5,000 years had been a species choosing, at ruinous cost, not to use the most dangerous thing in 100 systems, even on the ones who had earned it. My people were, I think, granted a voice in the lower tribunals not long after. A small thing, a first thing. They said it was in recognition of the quality of the threshold record. I think it was something else. I think the council had learned late and at a price it did not pay itself to listen for the things that are said softly. I'm still a scribe. Plus, well, I still keep records, but I keep them differently now. I've learned from, in my opinion, a tired woman who stood in a circle and poured water for the people who came to break her world, that the most important things are often said by those judged too quiet to matter, and that a record's whole worth is whether someone, someday, finally reads the clause that was there all along. She left the cups behind when she went. The collapsing kind and the flask. I've them still. Sometimes, when a delegation comes to surrender and they stand small and folding in that cold gray hall, I set the cups out on the bare metal table and I offer them water and I tell them they've come a long way. Most of them sort of refuse, they have been taught to. I leave the cups out anyway, in case anyone changes their mind.